We all feel it sometimes, that sense that the world is just getting more and more difficult, more disruptive. Well, it turns out there's actually an ancient guide for that exact feeling. So today, we're going to dive into the books of Jeremiah and Lamentations to see if we can find some real wisdom for those times when it feels like everything is just falling apart.
And that brings us to a question that, honestly, hits hard. It's really at the core of this whole story. What do you do when the world you thought you knew, the faith you held on to, the future you are banking on, just completely shatters? I mean, this isn't some ancient historical question. It's a deeply, deeply human one.
It's definitely no secret that we live in some pretty turbulent times. It often feels like the ground is just shifting right under our feet. And when that happens, it's a totally natural human instinct to look for companions, people who've been through similar storms and can maybe show us how they made it to the other side.
That leads to another really critical question. When a catastrophe actually hits, what does it do to us? Does it force us to kind of reshape our beliefs to fit a new, much harsher reality? Or does it just lead us to abandon faith completely? Or, and this might even be worse, does it just make us cling stubbornly to illusions that have already collapsed?
This is exactly where we find our guide. Because if you're looking for a companion for the absolute worst of times, the Bible points again and again to one figure, the prophet Jeremiah. And he's someone who has the credentials, believe me, because he lived through all of it.
I think we've all known people like this, right? You've got some folks who are absolutely brilliant on the page, just incredible writers, but maybe their real lives are kind of a mess. And then you have others who are just wonderful, wise human beings, but for whatever reason, they just can't seem to put that wisdom into words.
But Jeremiah, he was different. There was absolutely no gap between his message and his life. He wrote what he lived, and he lived what he wrote. This complete harmony, this authenticity is what makes him such an unbelievably credible and trustworthy guide for when things fall apart. You can really trust what he has to say.
And what a life it was. I mean, this wasn't some theoretical exercise for him. He lived through these crushing storms of hostility. He endured crippling self-doubt and just profound exhaustion. Every single thought he had was challenged. Every emotion he felt was ridiculed. He truly experienced the absolute depths of human suffering, and he wrote it all down for us.
So to really get a handle on Jeremiah's world, we need to understand the two massive events that basically defined his people's entire history. You can think of them as the two opposite poles of their whole experience with God.
So on one side, you have the Exodus. This is the ultimate high point. It's God's spectacular rescue of his people from slavery in Egypt. It's a story all about salvation, freedom, singing, dancing, just pure exuberance. Then, on the complete opposite side, you have the exile. This is the devastating low point. God's people are conquered and literally dragged back into slavery, this time in Babylon. It's a story of judgment, suffering, and just total devastation.
And this is exactly where Jeremiah was. He lived and he prophesied in the decades leading right up to that catastrophe. He wasn't commenting from some safe distance, He was right there in the middle of the storm, watching his entire world unravel.
And the direct, raw, unfiltered emotional response to that devastation, well, that is found in the book of Lamentations. If Jeremiah's book tells us what led up to the crisis, Lamentations gives us the vocabulary for the pain that was felt during and after it.
And it's almost impossible to overstate the scale of this disaster. The loss wasn't partial, it was total.
We're talking about rampant carnage on the streets of the holy city, unthinkable horrors, things you can't even imagine.
It was the absolute worst that can happen to a person, to a spirit, to an entire nation. Just a true nadir of suffering.
And this is why the book of Lamentations is so incredibly important. It doesn't try to explain the pain away or put a positive spin on it. Instead, it provides a structure, a shared language for an entire community to face its grief and anger and loss together without ever pretending that everything is okay.
Okay, so how does all of this come together? What's the real central message here? What is the ultimate point of all this pain and all this poetry? What are these ancient texts really offering us today?
Now, this is the key distinction, so it's really important to get this. Lamentations doesn't give you a neat, tidy explanation for why bad things happen, and it certainly doesn't offer a 10-step program to eliminate suffering. So what does it do? It gives dignity to our pain by taking it seriously. And most importantly, it reveals that we are not alone in it.
And that brings us right to the heart of it all. The ultimate message here isn't about some dramatic rescue from pain. It's about the presence of a companion in the pain. The text insists that God isn't watching our suffering from a distance, but is right there, in the middle of it, with us.
So, when you're going through the worst of times, what these texts are suggesting is that we shouldn't be looking for easy answers or a quick fix. They're offering something far more real and ultimately way more powerful, a companion.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty challenging thought. You know, we often think of faith as something that's supposed to protect us from suffering. But what if that's completely backward? What if suffering, in all of its brutal honesty, is the very place where real, unbreakable faith is actually forged? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.